Topic 2, finding the first 4 terms, working with graphs and tables, and solving real-world problems that have to do with sequences. I'm going to do objective 1 from topic 2 in this video, and that is to find the first 4 terms of a given sequence if you're given the explicit formula. So if you notice in these practice problems, I'm going to do number 2 and you're going to do number 1. This is an explicit formula for a given sequence. Now, before we've been given the sequence and we've had to find the explicit formula and then use the explicit formula to do different things. Now we're given the explicit formula and they want you to find the sequence itself, the list of numbers that involve the sequence. Alright, so number 2, if I was going to do number 2, it's just calling upon your knowledge of inputting numbers into a function and then having that spit out numbers of the function itself, alright? So I'm going to show you the work that is done, that is necessary for this process, and then talk to you about what each one of those numbers means, because you're also going to have to know that as well. Alright, so if I want to find the first number in this sequence, if you notice it says ace of n right here, but I want to find the first number, so I'm going to write ace of 1. I want to find the first term of this sequence. Ace of 1 then equals, I'm going to use the explicit formula, 2 times, you notice how they put the negative number in parentheses. I always want you to put a negative number, especially if it has an exponent with it, in parentheses, so negative 4, raised to the, now if you notice again, I don't want to put n minus 1 this time, I want to put 1 minus 1. I'm replacing my n's with 1. So 1 minus 1. In this case, n equals 1, and that's why I switched it from the variable n to 1. Now, I can just plug that into my calculator as so, and this is perfectly fine for you to do as well. And I'm going to punch it in exactly like I see it. So I do 2 times, parenthesis, negative 4, raised to the 1 minus 1. And I get an answer of 2. So the first term in this sequence is 2. Moving on to the next term, ace of 2. Similar process, 2 times negative 4 raised to the, now I'm not going to put 1 minus 1, I'm going to put 2 minus 1, because in this case, this n I care about 2. So 2 minus 1. I can punch that in my calculator. And I get negative 8. Then the third term, similar process, 2 times negative 4 raised to the, in this case, I care about the third term, so 3 minus 1 equals, and I can punch that into my calculator, 32, I put 34, it is 32, and it's a positive 32, and then finally the fourth term. So I get 2 times negative 4 raised to the 4 minus 1 equals negative 128. And I am done. I found the first 4 terms of this sequence. So you can list them out in sequential order, and I ask that you do that. So it's 2, comma, negative 8, 32, and negative 128. So you should be able to deduce just by looking at this that this looks to be geometric. It doesn't look to be arithmetic because the numbers are increasing pretty quickly. I want to talk a little bit about what these numbers mean, and so I'm going to draw a table, and I ask that you draw this too. Mine probably won't look very pretty. Header, and just like you did function practice in the prerequisite module, we're going to label this as a function would be. So I'm going to have n, which technically represents x, and then y for ace of n, alright? So inputs going into the explicit formula giving me an output. If you remember from the prerequisite module, inputs are an x value, outputs are a y value. So very similar, we're just relating it to this process. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers, so I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4 boxes. And my first n, what did I use for my first n? I used 1, right? I replaced n's with ones. So I have a 1. So that means if I input 1 into my explicit formula or my function, my output was 2. So my x value is 1, my y value is 2. Alright, and we label this n a sub n. A lot of times for functions you'll have x comma f of x, where x is the input, f of x, or y, this is technically y, is the output. Similar thing, similar thought process, n a sub n. So, next term, or my next n value is 2. I inputted 2. My output when I inputted 2 was negative 8. Input 2 into the formula, I get negative 8. So my x is 2, y is negative 8. Or n is 2, a sub n is negative 8. 3 was my next n, right here. My output there was 32. And then finally, if I input 4, I get negative 128. It's just another way to organize your information. I can label these as well. This is my first term, second term, third term, fourth term, but I put it in a table to make it look a little nicer. And I just wanted to talk about how every explicit function is technically, every explicit formula for a sequence is technically a function, where the n values are your x's, your inputs. You input them into the formula, you get an output, an a sub n or a y value. And I was able to create a table to represent this data pretty easily. So I'm going to ask you to do the same exact process for number 1, your you-do problem. I want you to find the first 4 terms by showing your work and inputting it into the explicit formula that's given to you. And then I want you to create a table of x and y values and be able to tell me why is it an x value, why is it a y value, based off of inputs and outputs. So please pause the video and try that on your own. At this point, I asked you to pause the video and try number 1 on your own. I have shown all the work necessary in blue there. I've inputted the first 4 terms, or my first 4 x values, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, into the explicit formula, and that spit out my y values right here. Or in terms of sequential terminology, my n and a sub n. My n's were the inputs, my a sub n's were the outputs. So then I drew a table in purple, and I also need you to be able to draw a table as well. And I have all of the inputs paired with all of their outputs, or all of the x values paired with all of their y values. Now, from these tables, you can do a lot of cool things. And one thing that we're going to be able to do, especially on the quiz coming up, is finding the rate of change from one x value to the other x value, which you should be able to do as well. All right, if you got that for your answer, great. This is how your work should look, nice and neat like that. If you did not get what I squared in red or what I drew in purple, the table, then please raise your hand or check with a neighbor first and then raise your hand and I'll come look at it. Because again, you need to master this in order for the quiz coming up. Now, I gave you 4 problems to do on your own and some IXL work as well. Your goal is 4 out of 4 to obtain mastery.